Welcome, everybody, to the Fusion Power Podcast. I am your host, Jared Gillespie. Today, we have Miss Abby Buchmiller on the program. I'm super excited to talk to Abby. She has been a serial entrepreneur from a young age, and she has run many multi-million dollar companies, doing everything from coal to oil to solar, and now business counseling and business coaching. She's also a member of the SolarCon team. So, Abby, really excited to talk to you today. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Jared. I am excited. I've always had so much respect for you and for Fusion Power family. So this is a treat. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Can you kind of give us just a little bit of a background on yourself for those of our listeners who have not had a chance to meet you yet? Can you just kind of give us a little bit of background of where you come from and some of the things that you've been able to, to do
Sure.
throughout your life?
Sure. I always have a difficult time answering the question of, where are you from? Because I really just moved about every year of my life. So was technically born in Utah, but spent my younger years in Alaska, kind of out in the remote, which was amazing. High school years were in Arizona, which I love. Arizona still feels like home for me. I then, after a mountain town in Arizona where I went to high school, ended up spending a few years down in the valley near you guys. And then, really I've been in Utah for so long now that it definitely is home, feels like home. I ended up in Utah shortly before getting married. So this is, 20 plus years ago. Career background looks like over 20 years in electrical contracting. So I definitely come from the trades. My dad, brother, uncles, father-in-law, husband, we all come from, trades, blue collar. My dad was a coal miner who worked insane hours and ended up in gold mining and then in oil. And, kind of brought me in for the ride in a family business. So, around the time I was newly married and had my first baby in my lap, I got an opportunity to get a try or exposure to a startup environment in building a business. And I'm so grateful for that. And, electrical contracting again in oil and gas has since translated to the space of oil, into solar, into our industry. And it's been a really fun, knowledgeable, wild ride and one that I continue to serve and show up for the space of contracting.
So the question I want to ask is, you've been working since you were very, very young. Can you kind of tell me what have been some of the lessons that you learned and maybe some of the benefits that have come to your life from starting at a young age, working and supporting yourself and especially working with your dad at a young age?
Yeah. I love this question so much. There's just so many answers that I could give, and they all make me, they just remind me of how grateful I am for the opportunities that I've had. But, to start off, I got kicked out of high school and I was very worried, that I may never make anything of myself. And I definitely felt the responsibility of providing for myself at a very young age. And I grew up very quickly. And, I can think of a few different job opportunities that were given to me when I was, in high school and people recognizing work ethic and giving me some really great opportunities to take on more and more responsibility. But specifically in working with my dad, he never had this, it has to be done my way, micromanagement, run things by me. Now that I am the age that I am and I have adult children, it gives me a new respect and appreciation for the way that he really empowered me by not imposing his own doubts on me, right? So specifically, we needed a functioning HR department. We were in the business of sourcing laborers all over the country and all the intricacies that go with that. And we even had people, on work visas coming in and out of the country to do the very specialized work that we did. We had contracts with Chevron and many of the big oil companies. And I, at my young age, was responsible for presenting to them how safe we were on their job sites. And I think that in a lot of work environments in the corporate world, there's this expectation that you have to just move up very slowly and prove yourself here, prove yourself there. And I'm just so grateful that I was thrown into very deep waters at a very young age. And I learned and developed my own skill set in there really isn't anything that you can't find the answer to. There's not, right? And the self-empowerment that comes from that path is something I'll be grateful for forever.
And I love that lesson, right? It's like a lot of times, especially in our generation right now, I feel like with our kids, we're trying to coddle them and make life as easy as possible, but you
Right.
look at the benefit of giving them responsibility and letting them lead at a young age. Man, what a benefit that gives them. What a
It's so
head start it
true.
gives them, especially in this world of on-demand culture that I feel is like really hurt the way that our kids are developing. I just love those experiences that you're describing here. And as a father, and you said you've got grown kids
Yeah.
now. I hope that I can instill those kind of same principles of work and responsibility for my kids so they can have that kind of same kind of experience.
It's so true. And I think that the irony of the whole thing is, when you become a parent, you have this innate need and desire to give your kids an easier path than you, or you look at some of the scary moments of your child and go, I want to do better for my kid. And in my experience with my oldest, he shocked me and said, I'm joining the Navy, I'm joining the military. And a lot of his reasoning was, you make things very easy on me, and you've given me everything, and I really want some purposeful pain. And that was such a wake-up call for me to not rob our kids of the same purposeful challenge and pain at a young age that gets us to where we are today, right? Like, it's just a silly concept that you would not recognize the value in it in your own parenting.
So you're running this really, really big company. You guys have major responsibilities dealing with these huge oil corporations. What was it that made you guys transfer, or what, I guess you personally, what made it you want to transition into this solar space? What was the end of kind of that oil phase of your life to wanting to get into solar?
Yeah, I mean, oil is very boom and bust, as I mentioned, and for us, I think that was even more true. The price of oil dropped really drastically. We had a change in presidents, and it was kind of just a little bit of a fallout on all fronts. We were scaling the business back drastically. A lot of our ongoing maintenance contracts were cut overnight. And it was my first experience, in the downside of owning a business. And as we were sort of scaling back drastically, my dad had a really tragic accident, and the business relied so much on him and his tribal knowledge. And he was certainly still there, and working. But I think it was a wake up call for a lot of us that we needed to diversify, and also when you've got a tribe of people, you've got to quickly be open to any way to sort of reinvent yourselves. And yeah, it really felt somewhat serendipitous, I think, that solar landed in our lap. And I can't help but laugh at our perspective at the time, because we thought, man, oil and gas is so crazy, and we're doing all of this work remotely all over the country. And oh man, solar sounds great. It would just be an easy ride. Residential solar too. It would be so much easier than what we're dealing with. And we just craved this sense of normalcy and consistency, and working in our own backyard in Utah, which is funny if you know how minimal the solar game Utah plays. And of course, we learned that it was more similar to oil than it was not. It's energy is energy, and it's very much it's been a cyclical ride for sure.
So with Empire, you mentioned, within 4 years, you grew literally an empire. You guys were in multiple states, making hundreds of millions of dollars a year with a massive sales force. How did you scale that so quickly? Because a lot of our listeners are, owners of either sales dealerships or maybe of install companies. What would you say were some of the key factors that helped you guys to grow so quickly? And then on the other side of that, what would you say might have been some of the on the other side of it, what was the problem of growing so fast?
Sure, sure. When I think about why we grew so quickly, I think there's an excellent combination, and to start for all of those who are out there trying to do it today. I think the thing that I wish that someone would have told me in some of my challenging business years, not at the beginning of Empire, is that so much of this game is timing. And Empire was launched at the perfect time. We had an incredible, valuable offering, and it really, for lack of better words, I mean, it really sold itself in that time and space. There were so many people that were pouring into the industry looking for a life-changing opportunity, paired with us on the install side thinking this feels so rewarding compared to what we were doing. Right, we were helping people convert and owning their own power, and all of these wonderful connections to passion-driven work that the industry provides. And it was just this boom that, again, we were just right on the front curve of. And
But there's a lot of companies, there's a million installers that they could have chosen, but they chose Empire. What was it that you guys did? I mean, how did you get so many of those sales companies to come join you guys?
Is this my moment to brag? Because I'll take it. I love it. We were genuine and authentic, and we carved a brand message out that was very catered and specific to speaking to who we wanted to work with, and it was build your empire here. We created a dealer program that was plug and play, a true win-win, not a we win but we'll tell you you're going to win, and then it's this challenge and battle with one another. We've put relationships first, and when I say we, man, I don't know that there was ever a moment during Empire's existence that I really handed over these sales relationships. This is, text messages on my personal cell phone, 2 a.m. on Christmas Eve. I mean, this is service like you wouldn't believe. And we believed it in every facet of what we did. And of course, we rolled out the exact same red carpet on the client side. We saw what had happened previously in the home services space and how terrible it was for contractors. And our mission was, terrible it was of an experience to work with contractors as a homeowner. And our entire mission was to just do things better, push the envelope, be better. And yeah, you asked about like growing quickly. The dealer model and its natural diversification, it is a really scalable way to blow up sales. It has it's a double-edged sword for sure. It has its challenges, and I certainly think that it's being done, in better new ways now. But it's definitely a powerful tool and one that helped us grow a ton.
As you grew so fast, what were the biggest challenges with that growth?
Those challenges were, namely, having such massive pipelines across so many different areas of the country where the expectation and the predictability was next to zero. So specifically, a dense pipeline in markets like Nevada, where it's an easy expected 2-week turn time to get projects fully funded and delivered. Meanwhile, we were building these very dense pipelines in areas like Minnesota. And, as you know, but for the listeners here, if something changes in regard to approvals on the net metering front or incentive front, pipelines can simply get stuck for a great long period of time. And so as financial modeling goes, if you will, if you are trying to manage pipelines and each project can range from, a 2-week turn time up to a 12-week turn time, to accurately model how your cash is going to be coming in and out of the business is beyond having a crystal ball, at some of those points. Certainly lessons learned to reduce those variables, right, for sure. But it is very difficult in the volatile environment, again, of COVID. It's like everybody's locked down. Just kidding. Everybody's buying solar. And it was this crazy reactionary, I think is the word, mode. And growing too fast, I know that I had a few people, be careful not to grow too fast. And I think that it's such an easy term to throw around. They grew too fast, right? And I definitely would be one of those people advising, which I am, cautious not to grow too fast. But what does that mean? It means that you need to understand every metric of your business with a high degree of certainty, and you have to have capital plans and backup plans for those backup plans to be able to fund the growth if it comes and when it comes. And unfortunately, that's just not the case for us. We were operating in a space where the best, lowest hanging fruit for funding and growing a business was the free capital of an M1 staged funding to contractors. And unfortunately, that created this cyclical mess of the best way to fund our growth is to sell more. And certainly there was no ill intent and all the belief in the world that all of those things were going to come together. And it was just unfortunately the situation that we found ourselves unable to obtain the capital that we needed to support the business.
What do you think you would have done differently if you could go back?
Oh gosh. I think that we would have been a lot more firm on saying no to things. I think that there's a healthy balance in being very focused on partnership. And unfortunately, we made some calls, myself very much at the top of that list, that were in the spirit of positive growth and collaboration with partners that, looked something like, yes, we will open this market for you. It helps your business. It helps our business. We'll take on the inherent risk to do so. Here's what we need from you is, a megawatt, 2 megawatts in these faster turn markets. When those end bargains are not held up on the other end, those are the situations where I take the ownership and should have done differently, because that can be, those pivots can be massive shifts on a business like ours.
Here's kind of maybe somewhat of a vulnerable question. As you guys kind of got to the peak and then it started to tank for all those different reasons, and you kind of saw, shoot, the end is here. Can you kind of, what was your emotional state going through that? Because that's really, really difficult when you work so hard for so long with so many people relying on you and having to call it quits, so to speak. I mean, how did you deal with that?
It's almost hard to explain because, you don't want to, I don't want this to be taken in any other way that I mean it, but it's in every way a mourning process of loss. And, the degree and the way in which we built Empire was very much, me and my face and my relationships and my word. And so, to begin to explain the absolute misery of letting that many people down and really holding space for the amount of loss that happened far beyond myself was both humbling and horrific, and burned me to the ground. And I, during that process, I was ultimately extremely hopeful. I didn't see, hey, the end is near, the end is near. What I saw was we were making great selfless decisions. We were finding the right partnerships. We were making things work in the best interest of everyone else, and specifically homeowners, sales partners, every partner, everyone that worked with the business. And to find out that that wasn't the case, and to find out that that wasn't the case, and that things would be tanking was it was absolutely devastating. And to be very specific, I actually have missing memories. I have blank spots, and I couldn't feel my body. I couldn't feel my hands and feet. It was really the most traumatic thing. And I know that sounds so silly, and such a first world problem to have, but it really was feeling just the weight of how many people had trusted in us, relied on us, trusted in me, relied on me, and how many people would be let down. And coming this far away from it, what's been first, like, front of mind for me, and what's also gotten me through, has been focusing and keeping that pain, keeping it in a space where I can turn it into a positive. Things like I simply wouldn't have been through that experience if I wasn't supposed to turn it into a way to bless others. I simply wouldn't have seen the things I've seen or experienced the things that I've experienced. There has to be a purpose for it. And I feel it's very up to me to put myself in those positions to find them. And I look for every opportunity to give back that I possibly can, which is, driving a lot of the busyness in my world these days. But it's tough, and it's really hard to explain unless somebody else has gone through it. I wouldn't wish it on my very worst enemy, but I also feel like it gave me so much. It changed who I am. It changed how I look at business. It changed how I approach relationships and conversations, and also it forced me into an even more extreme level of accountability that I just feel like is a wonderful place for anyone to be in.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that. I mean, and Abby, I'm sorry that you had to go through that. I know that that's got to be just unimaginable how difficult that would be, but seeing what you've been able to do with that, and the attitude that you have of saying, I'm going to take all of this hardship and these lessons that I've learned and be able to now in your next venture here with Radical and go on and and help coach other businesses, maybe to help them avoid some of the same things, but to be able to take that and turn it into a positive when you go through something like that, it's very easy to become bitter and become, just getting out of that would be a very, very difficult thing. So,
Yeah.
good on you for moving through that and continuing to move through that, because I'm sure that there's still, it's still got to be hard to do that. You got to this point now where you've moved into this new phase here where you're doing counseling, business
Mhm.
coaching. What was kind of the catalyst there for you to get into business coaching?
Um, it was really just trying to be who I wish I had. I mean, that's it in a nutshell. And you guys have been at this for quite some time, and so you could probably relate and resonate with this. But as a CEO growing our business, we never dreamed it would grow into hundreds of millions. We were it wasn't our first time down the entrepreneurial path by any stretch, but a business at that scale is something that very few people have any experience with. And I very much approached quote unquote competitors as friends in every opportunity that I could, and really tried to create give and take relationships. And those have carried me far beyond empire, by the way. So I recommend that for anyone. They've been a great value, but in doing so, just trying to find people that know the answers. And as you know, in solar, it's a very complexity ridden world, and that doesn't change. That only increases the products that we're selling and all of the different complexities to get them approved through a permitting process alone. Even if you just narrow down to that, there's so many different things and so many different approaches, and what works today doesn't work tomorrow, not only because of changes in the industry, but because of scale. What works at 10 doesn't work at 100, doesn't work at 200 or 500 or 1,000. And so trying to reach out and find mentorship from someone. Not only are there very few people that know, that have really been there and have lived it. There's a lot of people that would like to tell you that they know out there. The pool is very, very small. And, through my search, it's not a strength of mine to ask for help, but it certainly was a desire of mine to just try to gain access to any sort of knowledge I could to better myself and my company and my business through this. And I was really disheartened by how little of it was out there. And in truth, a lot of the leaders that were in my exact same shoes were asking the exact same questions. And there was a lack of knowledge, in an industry that's very young, with young business owners that had, amount of success in right place, right time. That's kind of par for the course, in my opinion. So, the idea to be a phone a friend for someone, which boy have I been since Empire. I think I'm the first person that someone calls when they aren't sure how to make payroll, and just to be that for someone else. I mean, it's healing. It's that that quote that you've probably seen, like, be who you needed when you were young, right? Like there's very few things that are as rewarding or as healing as showing up for someone else in the way that you really needed at a vulnerable time.
That's beautiful. Is there a driving message that you hope to help entrepreneurs understand as you work with them?
Yeah. Don't be so pigeonholed, and do not get caught up in tunnel vision. Do not get caught up in what your competitors are doing or the now. My biggest advice and my biggest breakthroughs I have with clients are, I've lived it, but this tendency to just feel like everything's so big and it's right here. And when you can just elevate your viewpoint to whatever the problem is, when you can elevate yourself to a 30,000 foot view on it, solutions suddenly arise, and emotions can remove themselves from the situation. And whenever you're making a call from a place of confidence or love or strategy rather than fear, it is a game changer. And I think so many people are so concerned in their own ego or how they show up in business and how they look in business. And I certainly didn't sign up to say, hey guys, I am the public failure of the century. Follow me, learn from me. You can still survive. It wasn't really what I wanted. However, it's kind of what I've been here, right? And so I already had a minimal amount of caring what people think about me, and this experience lit that on fire and tested it and said, really? Because we're gonna throw death threats and public mocking, and you really start to have a new perspective. That's just, you just want to shout from the rooftops of, hey guys, this isn't real. Like, it's a game, and at the end of the day, you focusing on building your dream, your freedom, why you did it in the first place. Forget what anyone else might think of anything. At the end of the day, when things fall apart, it's just you and your mess anyway. So stay focused on you. Like, that's my message.
So you talk about simplifying business approach, right? Simplifying processes and trying to make a little bit things easier. Where do you see entrepreneurs overcomplicate when they're,
Oh boy.
how do they overcomplicate their business approach?
Entrepreneurs definitely overcomplicate. I mean, the first thing that pops to mind when you ask that question, I have a strong passion for marketing and messaging, and I think entrepreneurs overcomplicate that to the 10th degree. Empire grew and recruited over 100 dealers through simple me in my bed on my cell phone, posting a message in an Instagram story without a marketing team. We had a great marketing team in the later days, but the growth from zero to there, it took place just simply having an authentic message, meaning it, and inviting people to the table and being focused on value. And I see so many companies throw so many, tricks and tool bags. It's got to be the right person in the right video. And it really, comes down to, is your message right? Because that's free. Your brand message and your why, those are free. And if you don't have them right, you're going to just throw a lot of money at marketing that kind of, falls flat. Definitely overthink that. I see business owners overthink how they need to start acting like a real business, a little bit early. It's like the scrappiness, that the longer you can hang on to scrappiness and bootstrapping your business just means that you have that much more strength when you get to the top. I mean, that's my bold opinion on the matter. And so I'm not above doing things in the trenches. I know it's very popular to say, never do anything, hire everything out. And, to a certain degree, there's definitely some logic there in scaling. However, I really love finding those competitive edges, and I wear them like a badge. We have a competitive edge because I can do whatever needs to be done in the business, and I will, be willing to, me and my team, to do whatever needs to be done.
I love that. So, and maybe that kind of leads into the next one. If you had a mantra to the way that you approach a new challenge, what would that mantra be?
It's got to circle back to an insane belief in yourself, like a delusional belief in yourself. And that doesn't mean being delusional that you'll never fail or you know everything. But the belief is that you can do hard things and that you can find the answers and that that you're capable, right? Belief gets you so far. And so, yeah, the mantra for me is to invest in yourself, believe in yourself, build yourself up, be your own biggest cheerleader, and push yourself to greatness, because nobody else is going to do any of those things for you.
And that starts with having a purpose, right? How do you get people to develop a purpose? Like, we know that that's important, but how do you get somebody to develop a purpose? Because if without one, you're going to be tossed all over the place. There has to be a very single vision of what it is that you're trying to accomplish. How do you coach people to have and develop that purpose in their endeavors?
I love that question. It definitely makes me think of what I think the primary goal of every good CEO should be. Because you have an entire team, that needs to have vision, focus, and purpose, and they're happier when they do, right? But when you have an insanely strong and clear vision and purpose for the business's existence and for the team at large, it is contagious, it is magnetic, and it is your biggest recruiting tool that you could possibly ever create. And, people inherently are looking for their tribe. They're looking for a place to be, and they are looking for their purpose in this world, where they fit and how they can make an impact. And so to create a business, it's just such a bland way of saying it when you're really creating a mission and, you're empowering people along the way to go to battle for this mission, having your team show up with clarity to what the company is existing for, why it exists, and what it is aiming to do, and how you see their role in that end goal. Just having that clarity and having that empowerment allows them, to take that message and turn it into whatever it will be to match on their personal level. At Empire, our message was empowerment. We wanted to empower homeowners. We wanted to empower business owners on the dealer and sales front, but we also wanted to empower every single one of our teammates to be their best version of themselves. And what was so crazy to me was this message of empowerment was just something that is a personal mantra of mine: self-empowerment, empowering those around you. And every person within the organization took that message of empowerment they would present on it, they would share with their teams, and I got to see the message of empowerment through the lens of hundreds of people through our organization, and it looked slightly different, but it was so meaningful, and it was so deep, and it was so raw and real. And I still get messages from people, tearing up and thanking me for that experience that they had and that container that we created for that. And so it's a really long-winded way of saying, I don't think it's through cattle prodding people, and I don't think it's through shaming, and I don't think it's through, it's not only through KPI and goal setting. I think there's a really fine balance of being authentic, open, vulnerable, and extremely clear on what the goal is, why it matters, and how they can be a part of it.
I love that. Abby, why do you think people fail?
I think it is because there's something that they needed in that experience. My failure gave me things that I couldn't have even dreamed, and am so grateful for, and didn't know that I wanted and didn't know that I needed. And every time I see someone struggling, it's so easy for me to connect the dots from afar and almost feel, and of course you don't say this to someone that's in the trench because it hurts, but I almost feel grateful and excited for them for what's going to come on the other side of it.
I love that. So here's kind of a loaded question. If I'm an entrepreneur and I'm trying to start a new business, what are some of the most important basics in starting and running a new business?
Get yourself, it doesn't have to be, employed on your team. These are expensive folks, but get yourself the right phone numbers to dial and advice and or fractional services to get your legal structure and entity right. This helps you serve people in the long run. And to get the foundation built the right way, I think is kind of the short version of that. If there's things that you don't know, things that you feel like you need to know, we are living in the world of ChatGPT. Turn that thing into your business advisor. Ask every question, every stupid question that you could possibly imagine. And I harp so much.
For sure.
Yeah, I harp so much on the foundation because, truthfully, there's businesses that I've had that haven't gone well. I can point back to cracks in the foundation that are easy to come over, and you think we'll address these when the business gets to a certain point, or we'll fix that later. Worst idea. It's always more difficult, and certainly after the business has created some value, that then becomes your first volatile situation to navigate as a leader. So I can't stress those pieces enough, but also just have a playful, optimistic, level-headed approach that's not about you and is serving others, and it will come back to you through your business journey.
What would you say, what's the key to growth? If I have a business, how do I get it to the next level? How do I scale that business?
Gosh, there's so many business types and entities. My head's racing in so many different directions. The key to growth, there's obviously the tools, right? We're living in the age of social media and visibility and getting your message out. There's also the value that you've heard a million times of having a network. Starting a business like Radical in an environment where I was a newbie to the industry would have been 10 times harder and slower than having my powerful network of close relationships that I had invested in over years, and trust that I had gained and earned, and respect to be able to jump in and work with other business owners that sort of understood and knew what I was built of, capable of. So there's always the value there, right? And being able to lean on those is incredible. But yeah, do not sleep on marketing and sales. And I've never had any formal sales training. And I know how silly that sounds because we are in the mecca industry of elite sales training. I've never sold solar. However, I have definitely convinced a great number of people to lock arms with me, which is sales in its own right. So be true to you, your own powers, your own strengths and talents. But keep on finding any way to get your message out in front of the most amount of people. And I think, looking at your offering and not being afraid to retool and retweak it 1,000 times and get out of your own way, finding what works. Be insanely question oriented, asking for feedback on every front, not getting stuck that you know better and what people want. People will tell you what you are doing poorly or why your offer isn't for them if you will just listen.
one of the challenges, kind of going back to sales, because it is sales and marketing, is going to fuel a lot of that growth. How do you provide a value for your sales reps, especially in this industry where reps want to go from one company to the next, right? They're going after the best pay. How do you provide enough value, or what do the value points need to be to where they want to stay and grow their empire with you rather than taking the lower red line?
Oh, that's a great question. And definitely one that I'm used to battling, and I've definitely seen some excellent wins in. I think that shifting the focus a little bit to, a teammate or a team member, or a fellow business owner, right? We all really want the same thing. We want to feel like we're plugged into a greater vision and purpose that can be so much larger. Some of the wholes, multiplier of our own efforts. And so having a really clear path and value add of how 1 + 1 does not equal 2, but it equals 4 or 5. And these are things like having a really scalable process that allows them to stay good at what they're doing, not have to break out of that and hinder the things that make them great, but by plugging into your organization that is built for scale and that can manage the type of growth that they dream of, it allows for them to just stay really focused in bettering their craft. And nobody really loves unplugging and rebuilding something new. How their customers are communicated with, what happens when there's escalations, how they can save face and or lead with the right foot in front of a homeowner. Those things are so valuable to sales professionals and sales partners. So do not overlook those things. Those things aren't something that you can talk a big game about and then fail on, that you have to deliver on that value. But delivering on that value, I believe, is the best way to create a long-term relationship.
Love that. Super. Let's shift gears real quick to SolarCon. You joined the SolarCon team this last year, or was it last year or this year?
I've been lightly involved in multiple years now, but this is the first year that I've served as an actual, in a formal role as the Chief Strategy Officer.
What are you guys looking forward to? What should everybody be super stoked about for this year's SolarCon coming up in just a few weeks?
Where do I even start? I could not be more excited about this year's show, and you should be too. You should definitely be there. I will start with Mr. Tony Robbins, who I grew up just thinking was absolutely incredible, and I have still never seen him live. And for me personally, this is going to be such an incredible experience. When I think about how that trickles down and pours into the young, tired, and stressed business owners of our space, I couldn't think of anything more perfect as far as timing. The show, thanks to our Solar Champions Fund, is going to be free for general admission, which is incredible. It's something that I was really passionate about early on. It's the biggest letdown is the idea of the industry being through what it's been through the past few years, and knowing how many of those just simply can't allocate the resources to be at a show that furthers networking opportunities, furthers education, keeps you connected in the space, and also gives you that spark back, right? And so for us to be able to pull that together and provide that to the industry is something I'm just so grateful to be a tiny part of. The show's going to be amazing. Every speaker, every panel has been thoughtfully curated and leveled up from years before, delivering value to, again, business owners. You're going to hear me harp on business owners a ton because that's my space. I feel very good about the way that we're showing up and up-leveling and providing support and encouragement for business owners. But sales professionals, we've got the best names on the best stages, and operations folks. We're covering the entire gamut this year. We're doing it in such a big way. And I'm just already excited for how next year is going to come together, because it's all of these pieces that I think we've all seen and just haven't quite connected the dots on. And this year required asking a lot of people to show up in a really big way for the industry with that in mind. And the fact that it felt a little bit like a moonshot and it's here is just it's amazing, incredible. And I hope that everyone that hears this message gets themselves there and takes part in this collaboration and this give back to other people in the space, because it's needed, it's important, and it's going to be such a good show.
Well, and you look at the journey that we've been on in solar over the last couple of years. We've all taken some pretty hard punches to the face.
Yeah.
And what I love about SolarCon is it's an opportunity for everybody to come together, whether
Yeah.
you're in sales, in financing, and whether you're an EPC, whether you're a software provider. I mean, there's everybody in the industry can come to this conference and collaborate and commiserate and challenge one another and inspire one another and listen to the leaders and get ideas on how to execute and fix and improve and grow. Like, we're all dedicated to this business. And if you feel like you're
Yes.
stuck at all, you got to come to SolarCon, because there's no better resource in the world that you could possibly get to improve and fix your business. And what you guys have done this year, I mean, it's incredible. The talent. Tony Robbins is amazing. I got to see him at Vivint several years ago, and it's one of those kind of life-changing things. Like, he's pretty magic what he's able to do. And so, like, everybody
That's what
should
I've
be
heard.
there for that, and just have your heart open to hear his message, and then everything else that's there, right? Listen to the panels, listen to the speakers. Don't go in there with an ego. Be humble,
Mm-hmm.
be open,
Mm-hmm.
learn, because there's just so much value that you can take, apply to your business, apply to your personal life, and improve all the way around. So, and SolarCon is very lucky to have you on the team, Abby. I'm sure that you've had a lot to do with kind of gelling a lot of this together as they've grown over the last several years.
I've got a brand new, I've worked closely with the team, but not this closely. And I have a newfound and even deeper respect and admiration for everyone on the SolarCon team. I really think that everyone should get a peek at what really happens in the background of pulling this off for the industry. And I think that everyone would have a new perspective. So I share that through me. It's pretty wild, and it's very selfless, and it's really impressive. And the team's phenomenal, and they do the things they do for the right reasons. And I love that. I love being a part of it. But I also love what you said, Jared. It's like the lack of collaboration that has existed in our space, back to where we were talking about my time and not being able to find answers and connection. The improvement that I've seen in the industry is crazy. And this year we have leaders and representation from different companies who simply just haven't engaged in years past, and they're engaging. And this is so important for all of us, because there's so many different perspectives and lessons to be learned from all different walks of life. And so I'm just so encouraged by that and that involvement. And I think that you'd be silly to miss out.
Okay, last question for you. Can you share what are any of your personal goals for the rest of the year?
Oh gosh, personal goals. I am on an endless pursuit to be the best version of myself in every room that I show up in. I know that sounds so watery, and I apologize in advance, but for me and in my world, that means constantly evolving as a mom and being who I wish that I had, and how I wish that I could have shown up, and always staying open to learn lessons as your kids hit different milestones and different stages. And it requires you to show up as a different version of yourself, and I'm here for that challenge. And it's very important to me to pour everything that I can into that. And being a wife, a spouse and business partner, and in my existence, those two are very intertwined. So we'll put it under the umbrella of a partner. Being a partner who shows up in a way to always inspire and encourage. And someone close to me blessed me by calling me a ride or die. And honestly, it's the one thing that I can just achieve to be, and feels so right to me, because that's how I hope to be for everybody in my circle. But it's always a journey. And as you touched on, I still have wounds that trigger me, and I still have, reactions when I'm still wading through the muddiness of trying to put together my past and trying to move forward. And so I'm always gifted new opportunities to try to be better and show up better. For my business, I am always learning everything that I can and trying to figure out how to be the best possible, knowledgeable, strategic leader that I can to bring what I consider what our business is, which is, very ahead of the curve concept and idea. I need to stay also very ahead of the curve and knowledgeable in my approach to serve that business.
Well, hey, it's no surprise why you've had the success that you've had. I mean, it's just this one conversation. I can feel your grit and your focus, your determination, and then your just good-heartedness of wanting to do the right thing. And I think that karma and the universe and it all just works together. You've been blessed, and I wish you the best, and I hope you continue to thrive in all of the different things that you're doing. Where can people reach out to you? Where can people find you? How do people connect with you?
Sure. I am most active online on Instagram and LinkedIn, and my name, Abby Buchmiller, is where you find me on both platforms.
Fantastic. Well, we appreciate your time today. I've learned a lot. Listeners, I hope that you can kind of digest some of the things that Abby shared. Most of us are entrepreneurial, and you've been able to learn from one of the best. So take a minute and jot down some of those ideas, some of the questions that have come to your mind, and reach out to Abby for some additional insight. But Abby, thank you for being here. Listeners, thank you for watching, and we will see you next time on the Fusion Power Podcast.
Thank you, Jared.